Hello, everybody. This is Joseph P. Farrell with news and views from the Nefarium on Thursday, July 28th, 2022. Don't forget, folks, tomorrow, the vid chat on tomorrow afternoon, I have moved to next week to Wednesday afternoon. That does not mean that I'm moving the deadline. You still have to get all of your comments and questions posted by 10 o'clock tonight. Anything posted after that time period, 10 o'clock tonight, U.S. Central Time, you'll just have to repost to the next vid chat. But I'm going to be rather strict about this one because I'm having to move the vid chat because of the high probability that we're going to have some severe weather tomorrow. And as you know, I've got to be ready to tune my ear to any weather sirens going off. Anyway, I have a short little article here. And it's the news in the article is interesting, but the real news is not in the article. The real news is in the insanity of the political leadership class currently in charge of the West. And I'm talking about the enviro-crazy, green, Great Reset, Bill Gates, George Soros, Klaus Moloch Schwab, all of these people that presume that they're going to run the world and their crazy policies. This article is titled Scholz, that's the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, opens door for extending nuclear power in Germany. And I want you to listen to this. I'm going to read the whole article. It's not that long. Quote, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz signaled that his government might consider extending the life of the country's 3 remaining nuclear plants as it seeks to bolster its energy security. The economy minister has commissioned an intensified worst-case scenario calculation. Let's have a look at that, Scholz said when asked Friday whether he might reconsider Germany's decision to switch off the units at the end of the year. Germany, the European Union's largest economy, is at the center of an energy crisis that has gripped the bloc. European Union governments have been racing to find alternative supplies ahead of winter after Russia's invasion of the Ukraine sent fuel and power prices to record levels earlier this year. The supply crunch continues to have ripple effects in the broader economy. Economy Minister Robert Habeck has commissioned a new stress test for Germany's infrastructure after an earlier assessment concluded that the country's supply wouldn't be endangered next winter and that nuclear power plants wouldn't be needed. We will once again calculate now, and then we'll decide on the basis of clear facts, a government spokeswoman said, regarding a possible extension of nuclear power. Behind the scenes, the coalition of parties in Scholz's government have indicated they may be willing to agree to a political deal that would allow passage of the controversial measure. In the past, the Greens, which include Habeck, have ruled out extending the operating time of nuclear plants. For the first time, the party is now considering the possibility. Should Germany expect gas scarcity next winter, all measures will be put back on the table, the Green Party co-leader Ricarda Lang told the public broadcaster ARD. One possibility might be through a national compromise that could draw in several different issues, according to Jens Spahn, the deputy leader of the CDU-led conservative bloc in Parliament. For example, should the Greens agree to an extension of nuclear energy, the liberal FDP party could perhaps end their opposition to a speed limit on highways. If the Greens are amenable to such a compromise, then we should all be able to talk about a speed limit, Spahn told ARD. Now, folks, I have little sympathy for crazy policy. And let's go back and retread or retrace the steps that led to this mess. The first step was, okay, we promise you, Russia, that we are not going to expand NATO nor the European Union eastward into the former republics of the Soviet Union. That promise came way back during the King George Herbert Walker Bush days. And of course, the West has reneged on those reassurances given to the Soviet Union at the time. By the way, to Mr. Mikhail Gorbachev. Then, of course, Russia began to warn us during the Putin years that any attempt to integrate the Ukraine into NATO and Europe would be a bad decision. And they warned us for years. And, of course, we went ahead and tried to do it anyway. Now, in this sorry tale, we have to remember that the alleged American president, Biden and co., has deep family ties, criminal ties, as far as I'm concerned, to financial shenanigans and political shenanigans going on not only in the Ukraine but in communist China. So in other words, this man, as far as I'm concerned, is badly compromised, and in my opinion is a national security threat just by dint of that. All right? On top of this, we then provoke this war, and Russia moves into the Ukraine, and we renege on our own energy policies, force the Europeans, who admittedly adopted the wrong policy by wanting to get all of their energy from Russia through the pipelines. We've forced Europe to basically hang their own economy on our policy, and now Europe goes along with it. And in addition to this, we have this green climate agenda that has been very vocal in German politics, everywhere else for that matter. Obviously, we can think of the current crop of radicals in the Democratic Party in this country and the mess it's putting this country in. Now, here's my problem. You don't adopt policy before you have the technology to make things work. You don't want to shut off your nuclear power plants until you have a viable alternative. And I'm sorry, Frau Merkel, windmills ain't going to replace the massive amount of power that your nuclear plants generated. Germany, you would not be in this mess had you not listened to people like Merkel and the Greens. Now, here's the problem with wind power. It only works if the wind is blowing sufficiently, and the other environmental problem, let us remember, is that it is a threat to birds and wildlife, and burying those windmill blades once the windmill runs out, those things are not biodegradable, folks. These so-called green technologies are anything but green. And while I'm at it, the same for electric cars. When the batteries eventually have to be replaced in the electric car, you're going to be out a lot of money just to replace the batteries. This whole climate change agenda and the people promoting it, folks, are absolutely crazy. They're the ones who, by and large, are responsible for our current mess. Germany would not be in this mess had it not shut down its nuclear power plants. And here we have clear evidence that these policies were crazy to begin with. And oh, by the way, now that we're caught in a crunch that we put ourselves in, we might want to rethink the policy. Yeah, you might want to do that, folks. These policies clearly are not working. They're not going to work in Germany's case. I read another story today that some town in Germany, that the government is shutting off the hot water, that Deutsche Bank has done a study of how much wood Germans are going to have to chop and curate for this winter to make it through the winter. I mean, this is nuts, folks. And we know who the people are. They have names. They are the Klaus Schwabs, the Bill Gates. Folks, it's time to start blaming the people that need to be blamed. The banksters, the climate change agenda nutcases for all of these policies. Don't rush to change your technology until you have something to replace it. There is, let me be very blunt, there is no sufficient energy source other than so-called fossil fuels, which incidentally are not fossil fuels, that is sufficient to move the world economy and technology into. There is nothing that can sustain the current state of the world's energy needs, other than perhaps nuclear. Now, folks, you know my problems with fission as a nuclear power for peaceful purposes. The other source, of course, is fusion, and you know my misgivings about fusion power thus far. So let's quit talking pie in the sky. If those technologies exist, then Mr. Globaloney has to be made to introduce them. And if they do not, they need to shut their trap and quit talking about this stuff, because so far they've done nothing to introduce those technologies that could phase out fossil fuel. That's the bottom line. And it's time we start blaming Mr. Globaloney for doing this. They literally are at war with the rest of us, and it's high time we recognize that fact. Anyway, that's it for today's news and views, folks. Kind of a grim one, but trust me, I picked the least the least grim one today. Don't forget, tomorrow there is no vid chat. I've moved it to next Wednesday at the same time, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I'll be there for the usual pre-chat, banter, and so on and so forth. Please get your comments and questions filed no later than 10 o'clock tonight, Central Time, U.S. Central Time. We'll see you on the flip side, everybody. Bye-bye, and God bless.